Saturn in the 8th house. In order for you to know in what house your Saturn is or any other planet, you need to know your time of birth at least within 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes the most. Precisely, otherwise, unfortunately, you cannot find a house position because it's very time sensitive. So what happens? How can you find out if you have your Saturn in the 8th house? Well, go first to my birth chart calculator at AstroLada.com, enter your time and place of birth, and you get a chart like that. And if Saturn happens to be, always this is the start of the chart, this square where the one Roman numerical number is the ascendant, is the first sign of your horoscope, so to speak. So the 8th sign from there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is here. So if you happen to have Saturn here, you have Saturn in the 8th sign from the ascendant. It's the same as having Saturn with the 8th house cusp, because sometimes the house cusp can be in a different sign. Sometimes also check if Saturn is together with the 8th number, Roman numerical number 8. Sometimes it will be in the same square, sometimes it might be here, sometimes even here, sometimes it might be here. It doesn't usually it will be in the same square, in the same triangle where Saturn is, which means the sign, the 8th sign from the ascendant is also with the 8th house cusp, but sometimes the 8th house cusp might be in a different sign, might be in the 9th sign or the 7th sign. But if Saturn is with the 8th, if you see Saturn together in the same triangle or square, which means in the same sign with the number 8 numerical, Roman numerical, then again Saturn influences your 8th house. Or it can be Saturn only here in the 8th sign without any number, but it will again have the influence of Saturn in the 8th house. So this is the most difficult position probably of Saturn, and I have it, so I'm going to be talking from experience for sure, because when Saturn is in the 8th house is the house of emotional security, and Saturn shows that these people lack it. They feel very insecure and vulnerable, such people. Whatever Saturn is something that we have lameness there with, we have inadequate feelings of. So emotionally we don't feel secure and grounded often. Emotionally we feel very vulnerable, people who have Saturn in the 8th house. Very sensitive people. This can bring a lot of complicated psychological complications, and this is one of the positions which can lead actually to addictions as well, in total breakdown periods. For instance, when a person just feels totally vulnerable, they isolate themselves from others. One way is to physically isolate themselves, another way is to actually develop some addictions and compulsive behaviors. It doesn't have to be only drugs and alcohol, but it can be some compulsive behaviors which kind of, kind of try to rebalance this way their emotional vulnerability. So it's a difficult position, a lot of psychological issues. A lot of time people need a lot of work psychologically on themselves. Wherever Saturn is, you need a lot of work, a lot of focus. So such people benefit with Saturn in the 8th house, going to psychologists, going to counselors, they might even go to astrology. They want to investigate the root causes of what is causing them this emotional pain, especially the more evolved ones. So the less evolved ones, they can totally shut themselves to any investigation, but the more evolved ones, they want to find out where this root of this vulnerability comes in them, this emotional vulnerability comes. So they start investigating psychology, astrology, everything. 8th house is the occult, the house of the occult, the house of the hidden, that gives answers to the hidden. So psychology is one way, self-help book, astrology, occult readings, books about life after death. And people with Saturn in the 8th house really benefit from such studies. You know, their fears and worries connected to the emotional vulnerability they start getting some answers, so they start resolving some of those karmic issues. But often 8th house people when Saturn is there, it blocks the ability for the person. 8th house is the house of merging with another. When you feel emotionally confident, when you feel emotionally stable, you have no problem opening up to another intimately. But when Saturn is there, the person kind of always, in the most intimate moments, especially in moments of sexual merging, they might have hang-ups. It's not for everyone who have Saturn in 8th house, but for, let's say, 70% of people, women or men, they have vulnerabilities to totally give themselves up to another, to open themselves to another, which is usually in sexual intimacy. This shows itself, you know, like some dysfunction or some fear or some inability to let go and relax your mind fully. So that's another thing, you know. Actually, sex can improve for those people after 35 onwards, you know, after 30, 35, when Saturn matures a bit more, when they have more, when Saturn stops bringing such negative influences after 30, usually 35. Saturn matures at 36 actually, so from 35 to 36 onwards, those issues are kind of resolved, the house position of Saturn, or to less extent, they don't really like choke the person so much. So these sexual problems start resolving, or even if it's not so much sexual, it's the ability to merge with another, the intimacy with another, to trust another, start resolving there better and better. And second house, 8th house on the Monday level is the finances of the other partner. Is the finances, the resources of your partner. When Saturn is there, this can be blocked. So, for instance, your partner, it can play out in different ways. When Saturn is really smashed there in difficult signs, for instance, in fire signs or water signs, it might be that you cannot expect your partner to bring in, especially your first marriage partner or the one that you live with, like a husband and wife. You cannot expect from relationships overall to gain a lot there financially. But if Saturn is in a good sign and is not so smashed, is not in such a bad position, you can gain from your partner. Your partner can make money slowly but surely. It's not going to be some big windfall, you know, like, you know, 8th house is what others can give you. So people with good planets in the 8th house, say Jupiter, Venus, you know, they can like win the lotto, have a windfall, or someone falls in love with them, leaves them a house, you know, or they inherit something. 8th house is inheritances. But people with Saturn, this is blocked. So they cannot rely so much on receiving from others. They cannot rely on handouts or some sudden local magical coming of resources to them, you know. Actually, I have this position, and you know, if you try gold digging, it's not going to work with this position. It can work like very little, you know, maybe something poetry. I would always end up till my 32nd year, to my 30th year from my relationship, I would end up giving much more to the partner. You know, my partners were not so stable there financially. There were some restrictions, but after 30, 35, things improve. And their partners can improve their finances slowly, and actually they can amass big amounts. They can become very rich. But again, it's not going to be overnight. Don't expect your husband or your partner or your wife, you know, all of a sudden to make you rich. It's going to happen over time, and actually Saturn in the 8th house can bring more and more wealth later in life. And as I said, 8th house is other people's resources. So people with Saturn there, they have fear even of asking help from others. I'm definitely like that. After 30, this starts improving. The person learns how to ask for help from others. But before that, a person with Saturn in the 8th house might feel guilty to ask for support, to ask for financial or emotional support from others. It's like, I don't want to bother them, you know, they kind of have worries there and fears like that they might be rejected this support. So as I said, they don't have even the good starting position of a gold digger. You know, gold diggers, they feel entitled to others' resources. These people, they do not. So then, yes, so also inheritances, matters of inheritances might be delayed or even denied. Sometimes people might have very small inheritance with Saturn is in the 8th house. Matters of, or it's delayed, or they have to do a lot of hard work and arguments and, you know, whatever, legal battles maybe. I just don't have inheritance. For me it's easier, so nothing to battle and fight over. As I said, 8th house is our vulnerabilities, our weaknesses, and Saturn makes them bigger in our consciousness. You know, we feel more weaker or worse off than we actually are. But these are the worst. Actually, you work through Saturn, and once you work through it, you actually can help others. So people with Saturn in the 8th house can be amazing after the 30th, 35th year of helping others in crisis situation, or others with with vulnerabilities and weaknesses, with addictions, others who have psychological issues, so such people can become very good psychologists. I think that Jung Carl Gustav Jung, one of the founders of psychology, had such a position, if I'm not mistaken. They can become great counselors, bereavement counselors, helping people in crisis situations, because they themselves have experienced a lot of those downs in life, this extreme situation of the 8th house. So later in age, after Saturn matures, after 35 or 30 onwards, they can help others. Actually, for them, it's harder to heal themselves. They have great ability to heal others, but not themselves. It takes them longer psychologically to heal from traumas. 8th house, the house of traumas. And Saturn is very kind of a hanging on influence. So such people can hang on to traumas from past life or from childhood, not releasing it even subconsciously. They might not be aware of it, but pain, they can kind of hang on more to pain. And that's why they learn. They really try to find ways to release this pain. Usually the worst case scenario is through addictions and drugs, to forget it. The best case scenario is through some certain psychological work, like, might be breathing exercises, might be visualizations, might be counseling, And usually they themselves become great at helping others release such toxins. 8th house is the house of toxicity. Such toxins and negative emotions from their life. So they become, as I said, they can be great in crisis situations, they can be great in emergency situations, careers, they can be great in astrological. You work through certain issues by sometimes making it your own career. That's why I'm an astrologer. It's not actually, there's a lot of truth in the saying that the most fucked up people become psychologists, because they had a lot of issues. So they work through them and they know how to help others do it. So this is very valid for people with Saturn in the 8th house. And often they might, especially in the first 30-35 years of their life, they might feel totally apathetic and dejected at certain moments, because those emotional baggage that they keep carrying, it overwhelms them, and they find it hard to flush it out before they turn 35 and 30. Maybe they can flush it out after 30. And the 8th house is the house of changes and transformation and healing. And Saturn is a very resistant planet. Wherever Saturn is, we resist that, even though we need it the most. And people with this position, they resist changes. If you're trying to, you better learn very good habits for people if you have a child with Saturn in the 8th house, because if it learns to smoke, it might take him forever to stop smoking. If it learns drinking or whatever. I have this position, it took me about 200 times to stop smoking. Occasionally I can have a hidden one. Still, it's very hard. They resist changes, they resist them. And later on, in their 40th, 50th year onwards, they become masters at it. Because they have to work so hard at something, they learn the intricacy of the transformational process, because it was so hard for them. It was so difficult to do it. They battled, they did it through so much effort that, they can lead and help others through the same processes. So a very good transformational healing influence later in life. In the early part of life can be quite fucked up psychological situation, because the person holds on to traumas, holds on to bad habits, holds on to even addictions and to vulnerabilities, but later on works these through. Let's see what else. 8th house is the second from the 7, which shows the family of your spouse. So they can be quite traditional, more older. They can be the parents of your spouse, might be older, or more from a working background class, or just with very working mentality of traditional values, very traditional, very kind of socially with social respect and things like that. But if Saturn is really bad, can be lower social standing. If Saturn is in a good sign, good dignity, they can have good social standing, but have very strict moral, structured kind of attitude towards life. They would probably have taught your in-laws, your partner or your husband how to be very strict themselves, how to work hard. And let's see, I think we mentioned everything. It's mostly about this emotional issues. It's about the difficulty of letting go of things, and these can resurface over and over in life, and little by little. Such people, they should not give up trying to make changes. It usually takes them 100 times before they get it right to make a change, to transform their life. and they cannot expect sudden results when it comes to miracles and healings in their life. You know, sometimes people, for instance, someone has been battling some addiction and all of a sudden they have an epiphany and overnight they stop drinking, you know, or someone has been having a trauma and something happens in their life, or someone gets a great windfall. These things don't happen with Saturn in the 8th house people. They need to work through everything slow, through all changes in their life slowly but persistently. Every day. They shouldn't give up. When they try for change, it doesn't happen, they shouldn't feel totally dejected and give up on it, because a lot of people, especially in their first 35, 40 years with Saturn in the 8th house, just give up when they're trying to change something and happens too difficultly. But later on, as I said, they become masters of that usually. Thank you. The 8th house represents our way of departure of this world. So it represents death. So when Saturn is there, it's the ultimate change. You know, we said 8th house, house of reversals and changes. The ultimate change is leaving, is dying. So Saturn there has total resistance to it. So this is one positive thing of Saturn in the 8th house, is that it can bring longevity, because the person just hangs on and doesn't want to leave to make the ultimate change. And I've seen it in many people who basically have longer lives. And it also 8th house shows the way of you can die as well. So Saturn represents old age, so you can die from old age. In worst case scenario, when Saturn is in more difficult signs with more difficult aspects, which only an astrologer can see, Saturn in the 8th house will represent a Saturnian type of death, which is not so pleasant, which is from cold, from malnutrition, or from something chronic which's been around, say, for 10 years and you've been slowly dying of it, but it's a slow death. And often when Saturn is in the 8th house, it's been registered that such people die with their consciousness full. They don't lose consciousness, you know, like to be saying days of coma before that, but they hang on to the last moment of life. Sorry. Yes, so the type of death can be as well Saturnian, something which prolongs a long disease that you die from, something which is due to stiffness, which is due to old age, usually the best case scenario, or tumors. In the worst case scenario, Saturn represents tumors as well, cancer, but usually it will be towards later age. Thank you.